Okay, good morning and welcome to the Caribbean Trade, Tourism, and Investment Bureau in Southeast Asia webinar. And we would like to welcome everybody to this momentous occasion. And we will be starting momentarily and hopefully have everyone prepare for this webinar. So we will give everyone a few more minutes to enter the room and enter the live YouTube, and we will begin the presentation in about 2 or 3 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be starting in about 2 minutes, and that's hope everyone will get ready. Okay, good morning, and we will be we'll be starting this webinar live stream in about a few moments. And I would like to introduce myself. And of course, my name is Matthew Paharis Hinkson. I am the Representative Counselor of the Caribbean-ASEAN Council and the Executive Director and Envoy for Diplomatic Affairs of the Eastern Caribbean Southeast Asia Chamber. So good morning to everybody, and welcome to the first exclusive information about and details about the Caribbean Tourism Trade and Investment Bureau in Southeast Asia. Just before I introduce my colleagues here with me today, I would like to share this short of history about where we are now. We began the Caribbean ASEAN Council just a little bit over a few years ago, and Eastern Caribbean Southeast Asia Chamber in 2016. So this bureau culminates all of that activity, and we are very fortunate to have a new partner with us that will be implementing this bureau. So let me introduce, without further ado, let me introduce my colleague, my partner, or our partner, the CEO of the Jump Network, Mr. Jed Mercada, and of course, that's Jed, very young fellow, and Abigail Tizon. Abigail is, of course, our Administrative and Program Development Officer at the Eastern Caribbean Southeast Asia Chamber. So they will be joining us here today. We are lean and mean, just for this webinar. And we request that your questions should be posted via the chat box on YouTube towards the end of our slide, which I will inform you, where you can ask your question later on. So without further ado, we shall begin with the webinar. So again, my name is Matthew Pahara Zingson, and I represent two organizations, the Eastern Caribbean Southeast Asia Bureau and the Caribbean-ASEAN Council. Today's participants, of course, would like to welcome you here from the Caribbean Tourism Organization, Ms. Faye Hill and Ms. Trotman. And also we have public sector and private sector entities from these countries: Anguilla, Antigua Barbuda, Bahamas, Barbados, Belize, Curacao, Dominica, Grenada, Guyana, Jamaica, Puerto Rico, St. Martin, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and Grenadines, Trinidad, Tobago, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. So thank you so much for being here today and for participating in this very exclusive and momentous webinar. Now, before we begin on providing more information about the different organizations that are part of the Bureau, please allow me to briefly give you a background in Southeast Asia for those who have not been to this part of the world. And we are broadcasting or streaming this webinar straight from the head office of the Jump Network here in the Philippines. And the Association of Southeast Asian Nations is poised to become the fourth largest economy, according to the Prime Minister of Singapore, which he mentioned at last year's 50th Economic Ministers meeting recently held there. And according to the 2019 OECD Economic Outlook with a report they released last July, they believe that the GDP growth for this region in 2019 and 2020 are expected to remain high, 4.9% for this year and 5% for next year. Now, the five major economies of Southeast Asia, or what they call the ASEAN 5, which is Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam, they believe, the OECD believes that Vietnam and the Philippines will remain as the growth leaders. Now, for the countries of Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar, they will continue to set pace in Southeast Asia for the near term. So that is very good information. Now, just a little bit more trivia. Forbes magazine lists 20 top billionaires, or 20 billionaires in Southeast Asia, and they have a combined net worth of about 200 billion US, and they come from the 6 countries of Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. And as you can see, since Indonesia has the largest number of population in Southeast Asia, it is not a wonder that there are 35 billionaires in Indonesia, 25 in Thailand, 18 in Malaysia, 17 in the Philippines, 16 in Singapore, and 5 in Vietnam. And this list grows bigger every year. Now, let's move forward. The Caribbean-ASEAN Council is essentially an international social civic volunteer advocacy program. It is an NGO that pushes for stronger relationships between the Caribbean and Southeast Asia in terms of not just economic, cultural, and business, but more effectively in terms of aligning themselves with similar problems that combine or coincide with the Sustainable Development Goals. We are now moving forward towards consultative status, and we're hoping to be have that in a few years' time. Now, we are the only organization, as far as we are aware, that specifically connects the 16 independent countries and 18 associated territories in the wider Caribbean, not including Latin America, specifically just in the Caribbean. Now, and just connecting that with the 10 member countries of the ASEAN. Our main activities revolve around accomplishing the goals of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And among our first initiatives for the Council was establishing the Asia Caribbean Open Institute, which conforms to goal number 4 of the SDGs. Now, the Institute provides essentially free education, not only to students who cannot afford to go to a good school in Southeast Asia or the Caribbean, but essentially for anyone around the world. The school follows European education standards, which provides opportunities for students to have this quality collegiate level education through a distance form of delivery. And that can be found through asiacaribbean.institute if you want to visit that project of ours. As of now, we have about 17 enrolled students as of the second quarter of this year. Now, that is what the website looks like. The Council's activities are administered by the Chamber. As I mentioned earlier, we are a two-pronged organization, the Eastern Caribbean Southeast Asia Economic and Cultural Chamber. It conforms to the ideologies or the ideologies and recognized by the UN Office for least developed countries, landlocked developing countries, and small island developing states. It is part of the SIDS Global Business Network, and the Chamber focuses mainly on the 6 Commonwealth member countries of the OBCS, namely Antigua Barbuda, Dominica, Grenada, St. Kitts, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent. So, and of course, we are very thankful that both organizations have been recognized by the CARICOM Secretariat, or at least acknowledged, and also by the Royal Highnesses, the Prince of Wales and the Princess Royal. And for those of you who have received invitations to this webinar, you have received the letters attached to that invitation. So before I move forward with explaining the Bureau, please allow me to introduce my colleague, Jed, again to discuss the JUMP Network. To that invitation. So before I move forward with
digital
the Bureau,
has always been ingrained in our DNA.
Jed,
This time around, we're taking our business one step further. The JUMP Network.
To that invitation.
Business transformations through
forward,
insight,
with
ideas,
digital
innovation.
has
Always
always
been
been
ingrained in
a
our
digital
DNA.
and
Managed
Jed,
solutions. This
again,
time
to
around,
discuss
we're
the
taking
suite
our services that will drive success to our clients' business. The JUMP Network, all housed under business transformation through the JUMP Net idea, digital innovation. Always been ingrained in a digital and managed solution. This time around, we're a suite of services that will drive success to our clients' business.
Okay, so please allow me to pass the microphone to Jed.
Okay, thank you for having me. Good morning, everyone. So I'd like to introduce to you our company, the Jump Network. So we started in 2013 as Jump Digital, where we are a digital production company in the Philippines, servicing a liquor company and a tobacco manufacturer. After a few years, we've expanded it, and the company has been recognized by several award-giving bodies. Eventually, we've evolved into the Jump Network, and we have added services such as integrated marketing services, software development and IT solutions, and managed services. Starting 2015, we've expanded regionally and are currently operating in 5 countries across Southeast Asia. And we are scheduled to open further representative office in Singapore, in Malaysia, and in Thailand. So as you can see, the biggest group is actually in the Philippines, which is our home country. But we've hired across Southeast Asia. So as mentioned, we started our company offering integrated marketing services. So it's services that includes strategy, creatives, digital media, out of home. We produce viral videos or video production, customer relationship management software, and social media. We also have a very strong software development team and IT solutions group. So we've developed from basic to complex applications, and it includes software production, support and maintenance, web development, mobile apps development, e-commerce, systems integration, cloud services, and even IT staffing. One of our biggest group right now, which would include our services for the Caribbean Bureau, is managed services. So these are support services that we customize to help achieve business goals. And it would include, but not limited to, HR, payroll solutions, billing and collection services, sales and account management, and other services that require performance and efficiency. So just to show you some examples, we've won campaigns for our clients. So the Boomerang Awards, and we've developed websites that's been recognized as the top websites in their category, including one for Mitsubishi Motors Philippines. Some of our clients are the leading corporations in Southeast Asia, including NutriAsia, which is one of the biggest condiments manufacturer in the Philippines. Sido a listed corporation in Indonesia. Welch's, which is a US-based company. We've handled hotels. So for tourism, so Marco Polo Hotels, Shangri-La. We actually also handle Conrad Hotel. We've handled a lot of the big manufacturers like Century Pacific Food, Ribisco, Starbucks Coffee as well. We've handled campaigns for them. Goodyear, one of the world's biggest tire manufacturer. As mentioned, the company that I mentioned earlier, the tobacco manufacturer, is still our client 6 years after, the Japan Tobacco International. We also have our major client, Myanmar Distribution Group, which is the biggest and largest distributor of products in Myanmar. Sky Cable, which is the biggest cable company in the Philippines. Vistaland, which is the biggest real estate company in the Philippines. McCormick, which is a global condiments manufacturer. So basically, when we launched this in partnership with the Caribbean Council, ASEAN Council, we wanted to provide efficient managed services for the implementation of the business objectives of the Caribbean Council. So basically, it's a subscription service that aims to be a working catalyst in increasing economic trade and relations between two regions. So what we see is that we have clients in our portfolio that's always interested to expand and invest into other markets. We also have strong relationships with the leading tourism companies in the Philippines, and we wanted it to assist in fostering trade and economic relations between the two regions.
Okay, so thank you, Jed. And like what Jed mentioned, that is the objective of the Caribbean-ASEAN Bureau. And please allow me to take you through the next few slides and discuss with you a brief, detailed information about the services of the Bureau and how it can help extend that potential for the Caribbean in Southeast Asia. We are very much aware that each of the organizations, the chambers, the entities, the agencies that are presently watching this webinar and listening to this webinar now have their own goals. So that's why we are not going to mention any specific amounts for this webinar, but we are going to give that after the fact. So last week, if you noticed the backdrop on our video earlier, we officially launched the bureau here at the Jump Network head office in the Philippines. We are located at the TV5 Media Center. TV5 is the third largest media conglomerate in the Philippines, and we are thankful that they were able to give us an entire floor to provide as our head office. So we had the Honorary Consul General of Jamaica present to witness that launch, together with representatives from the Consulate of the Dominican Republic and Karolinska Institute in Sweden. These are the basic services that the Bureau will provide to all those who subscribe to it. We will have tourism promotion and advocacy, trade representation, trade mission, trade show support, business-to-business matching, direct investment promotion, sourcing services and support, integrated marketing services, market analysis and research, business event organization. Now, for those representative offices that the Bureau will have, these will be provided individually per country, so that we will be effectively providing a targeted approach to the countries that you want to approach. So just to give you an idea that we can provide a specific client, for example, we can have investment partners, industry relations, that whether if you want to look for a partner or a funder or investor, we can search one within our portfolio that you can review, or we can search one for you in general. Or we can do government relations for you in case you would want to handle something specific, or a policy advocacy, or just merely promoting tourism for the tourism entities that are watching the webinar, whether you be the Ministry of Tourism or the Tourism Board or the Tourism Promotion Agency. That can include tourism investments for the investment promotion agencies, for the Ministries of Trade, for the Ministries of External Trade as well. And all over on top of that, you can also just be a conduit. The Bureau can also be a conduit to provide you with more information about Southeast Asia before you start engaging. So all of that can be specifically tailored to your requirements. Now, for those who are watching us that are in the tourism industry, specifically in terms of getting more tourism or promoting tourism in your country, here is one vital information that we'd like to share on this webinar, that the Caribbean region in general is largely unrepresented in Southeast Asia in terms of whether just from promotional to investments in general. I recently attended ITB Asia, which is the equivalent of ITB Berlin for those who are aware in the tourism industry, and that is annually held in Singapore. And only the Dominican Republic Ministry of Tourism and the Dominican Republic Tourism Board had presence. They have been at this ITB event for the last, as far as I was informed by the gentleman I met there, who is the Australian representative for the Dominican Republic Tourism Board. They have been present at the ITB Asia for the last 3 or 4 years. So, and up to today, up to 2019, it's only the Dominican Republic that had presence in this large event. Now, let me just give you an idea of who else is participating in this ITB Asia. I also saw booths from Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, the Republic of Iran. So just to give you an idea, this is not a purely usual suspect, so to speak, and that, as far as we are concerned at the Bureau, is a loss of opportunity for the Caribbean region. For countries that are, of course, normally associated with tourism, it would not hurt to get more tourist arrivals from the Southeast Asian countries. There are more than 600 million Southeast Asians all over the region. For the benefit of a conversation, let us say that only 10% can afford to travel leisurely. That is still a big number. And if there's no promotion from that part of, or from for this part of the world, that is a loss in business as far as we're concerned. Now, one of the things that we plan for the Caribbean ASEAN Bureau is to establish a Caribbean tourism conference, which will not just promote tourism for the Caribbean and Southeast Asia, but as well as get possible tourism investments. And more importantly, because Southeast Asia and the Caribbean are two regions that are often hit by climate change nowadays, and also by the regular intervals of hurricanes or typhoons, as we call them here in this part of the world. So it is very much important to be able to have that knowledge that will help you in getting more sustainable tourism. So one of the important conferences that we are planning to establish in the near future for our clients in the Bureau will be the Caribbean Tourism Conference, or the Caribbean ASEAN Tourism Conference. Now, for those of you who are engaged in business investments and trade for the Ministries of Trade and Investment Promotion Agencies that are watching or listening to this webinar now, we have also opted, or we have planned ahead for different activities to increase working relationships with the different public and private sector entities across Southeast Asia, to generate more interest in the Caribbean region. Because as you know, most of the people in this part of the world believe that the Caribbean is just sun, sea, and sand. So we need to start off with that mindset that the Caribbean is not just sun, sea, and sand. So to start off with that, to promote and push for that, some of the activities that we intend to implement will be the Caribbean ASEAN Investment Forum. Now, the Caribbean ASEAN Investment Forum will help establish not just a stronger trade relationship for Southeast Asia, but essentially for that country where we will be holding it. So we are targeting, and please do not quote me on this yet, to hold it on 2020 or 2021, most likely in Indonesia. Indonesia, as you know, has the biggest number of population in the region in Southeast Asia, and also the most number of high net worth individuals and families, and also the headquarters for the ASEAN Secretariat. So that is also why we're planning to hold it there. So that will establish a good relationship, hopefully, between the governments of the Caribbean and the governments in Southeast Asia. One of the things that we are going to establish already, or have a target date, will be arranging trade missions in cooperation with the Chambers of Commerce and the Ministries of Trade and Investments and Investment Promotion Agencies, if possible, in the countries that have them in the Caribbean. So these trade conferences will be anywhere from a small trade conferences to a large trade conferences where the trade missions can actively participate and communicate and talk and meet with potential partners in Southeast Asia. So our target date for the first mission is 2020, and for the clients that will be subscribing to the service of the Bureau, you will be informed of further details of this. So that ends our webinar presentation. We didn't want to bore you with too much details today, but we would like to hear from you with your questions now. So please do put them in the chat box. And while we wait for that, we invite you also to take a list of the email addresses that you have on the screen now. These are the email addresses that we would want you to send an email to with regards to receiving a detailed subscription proposal. And also very important for us is that those that are part of this webinar today will receive our in-depth 2019 business report entitled The Dragon Economies of Southeast Asia, which we had externally commissioned research. It's about 60 pages that encompasses the more detailed information about seven economies in Southeast Asia, namely Brunei, Singapore, Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, Malaysia, and Vietnam. So those are the dragon economies of Southeast Asia. And this in-depth business report will give you an idea. Good morning, Mr. Beckles. How are you? Yes, we will be providing a copy of the presentation at the link below, and Abigail will be sending you a copy as well for all those who participated in the webinar. Good morning and hello to everyone in Curacao. The Caribbean Asian Tourism Conference is not the details are not yet as planned for today. We will be providing them to our clients by January 2020. Yes, please, Mr. Beckles, feel free to share the information with your members. Uh, that will be no problem. Also, I'd like to remind everyone that um, this exclusive preview is not as detailed as to those who will be sending, of course, the subscription proposal for 2020. Um, the offices of the Caribbean ASEAN Bureau are officially going to roll out on January 1, 2020, with the five existing offices already in place, and Singapore and Malaysia opening by the first quarter and second quarter, respectively. And hopefully, we'll have more details for that by before the year ends. Yes, good morning, Mr. Queen. You're most welcome. Again, if anyone has questions, we would be more than glad to answer them. Any activities planned in the Caribbean? Yes, we are planning to establish an informative conference in 2020 or 2021 for the Caribbean ASEAN Bureau. Again, that would be specific only to prospective clients. The general information will be available um, online for the Caribbean ASEAN Bureau. At least, essentially, the information that we provided today is a preview of a website that we will be launching before the year ends. A website domain has been reserved for that. It's called CARIBBEAN.ASIA, and we will be providing all that information in the next few months. Good morning, Miss Yumber from St. Lucia. Yes. Who will be the contact person? Miss Abigail will be more than glad to get in touch with you. And please send my regards to Miss Gaspard. I am scheduled to go back to the Caribbean in the second quarter of 2020. I am not yet sure which island I'll be visiting, but originally the council will be planning to go to the countries that we have not visited to introduce ourselves so far, and of course thereby introducing the bureau as well. Um, we have yet to visit about half of the Caribbean, and we are hoping to be able to visit the rest of the region before the end of next year, or at least before the year end of 2021 rather. So some of you I have met personally, and some we have already conversed as far back as 2016. So we look forward to your uh, good support of this momentous activity. Yes, I was able to meet Mrs. Gaspard, I think last year. Yeah, Mrs. Irene last year. Was it last year, Abigail?
Last year.
Oh yes, last year. Yes. So I was there, and I was actually stayed in Castries for about a month. Yeah, I think I was in for about a month. We are definitely planning to come up with a road show for the Caribbean ASEAN Bureau in the next, if definitely not in 2020, but definitely in the near future. It is going to be a very difficult roadshow because we are trying to maximize the time that we have for also implementing activities in Southeast Asia. Our priority now is to engage in the clients that would like to implement, ideas or maybe research on perspective, getting more business from Southeast Asian companies or partners from coming from Southeast Asia. So most of the chambers of commerce, we are going to hopefully ink a partnership or a working partnership with the network of Caribbean Chambers of Commerce or CARICHAM. I was able to speak with Ms. Lizra Fabian of the Dominica Association of Investment and Commerce, who is, I think, the chairman of CARICHAM, and we're hoping to work closely with them um, to develop, business relationships, and of course, with the support of all the ministries of trade, investment promotion agencies, the tourism boards, etc., that will become a reality. So this is a momentous task as far as we are concerned, and we are looking for everyone's support, especially the ones that would enable us to move forward with our similar objectives. Again, if anyone has questions, please feel free to just input them at the chat box.
Di ba? Parang
We are planning to engage in the trade missions, hopefully by third quarter of next year. It will coincide with a maybe some of the activities, major activities that will be happening in Indonesia. We are targeting Indonesia as one of the largest, of course, if not the largest economy in Southeast Asia. And that is why it will probably not take one, but two trade missions to be able to effectively look for business partners from Indonesia. As far as we know, there has been a good relationship between the Caribbean and Indonesia, with Indonesia sending their second ambassador to CARICOM a few months ago, I think, or is it early this year? The ambassador of Indonesia to Suriname is also the concurrent ambassador of Indonesia to CARICOM. Yes, thank you, Mr. Sam. For Curacao, it will be the Ministry of Economic Development. Thank you. I love Curacao. I just was there for a day. Uh, Not enough time. I would love to go back. In the future, the Jump Network is also planning to establish an office in Miami to implement activities, not just for their company, but as well as the bureau. So that is something that we want everyone to know, but we're not including that yet as part of our service. But that is something that we intend to work together with so that you will have a nearer connection so that they will be able to implement, and talk to the service provider directly and not just across the pond. One of the things that we would like to inform everyone as well is that this activity has been in the making for a good number of years. Well, a good number of years since we began, and we hope that we can push with your support the trade missions and the Caribbean ASEAN conferences, the tourism conference as well, so that we can effectively continue what we're trying to do. Now, one of the things we're also planning, I forgot to mention earlier, is thank you for reminding me, is that part of the Caribbean ASEAN Investment Forum that we are planning is intergovernmental activities, where, like I mentioned earlier, CARICOM, ACS, and so on, with their ASEAN counterpart. So it will be possible to have heads of governments present at this event, and that is one of the dreams of the Caribbean ASEAN Bureau. And with your support, hopefully, that will become a reality. Well, we hope to have that conference in Curacao as well. Why not? Okay, if there are no more questions, we would like to close this webinar. And again, should you have any further queries or things that you would like detailed, we would be more than glad to answer them via email. The email is posted there, secretariat at CaribbeanASEANCouncil.org, and Abigail's email is admin@ecchamber.org. We'd also like to inform everybody that all clients for the Bureau that sign on before January 2020 will be entitled to a reduction of fees. So that is something that we believe would be very vital for those countries that would not want to initially engage a lot of financial risk in Southeast Asia. We believe that there's a lot of opportunities here, of course, but we also understand the limited capabilities of the countries in the Caribbean. So that is something that we look forward to hearing from everybody, reactions and comments, and probably queries as well. So thank you so much for your time, and we hope to hear from all of you. And thank you so much. Again, my name is Matthew Parasingson, and this is Jed.
Hi.
And we'd like to hear from you again in the near future. And Abigail, of course, a trusted colleague, will be getting in touch with you together with our other team members at the council and at the Jump Network. Thank you so much, and enjoy the morning, and happy Halloween.